Mute myself for just a second.
All right. We are live. Hello there, fellow browncoats out there in the world watching this stream. My name is Steve Fischer, and I am a little blurry. I see my camera's a little blurry. Hopefully it'll get better. So I am Steve Fischer, founder of the Rochester Browncoats in Rochester, New York. And I work with Otherworldly Fundraising. It is a group of friends that got together that want to help make things better for people, for charities and raise money. So every year, every September, we throw a charity weekend. It's basically like a Comic-Con. Hold on, I gotta see if I can get my camera not blurry, unblurry. All right, I'm gonna just shut my camera off for a minute.
You feel blurry?
I've met Steve in real life. You actually are a little bit blurry in real life.
Oh, am I? Okay.
Yeah. I've never felt like it needed to be brought up, but
I don't. Do I look blurry to other people?
Do you want to use the one on the laptop instead?
Okay.
Fuzzy isn't quite the right descriptor. Yes, blurry.
Okay.
And
no,
fuzzy.
well, if need to, I will pop it up. But right now, I'm okay.
I think is your camera trying to get Nathan Fillion's face?
There we go. Maybe. Oh, maybe. So, we are Otherworldly Fundraising, and we do what's like a Comic-Con every September, sometime in the fall, where we'll have celebrity guests and comic book artists and comic guests, pop culture guests, and we have a whole weekend of con activities, all raising money for a charity. And we've only been going on for about 3 years now. So what we want is to continue to do this every year and grow bigger and better and get our name out there so people know who we are. And in order to do that, in an effort to do that, we've decided to have monthly chats where we'll just do one chat a month, one night. We'll just figure out what we want to talk about. My wife and I back in August did a chat all about board games and our top 10 favorite board games. We did one in September, or in December. It was a cooking one where my wife did a cooking demonstration, and we're just looking to do what we can to keep our name out there. And normally we only raise money for charity during our September event, and the rest of the year it's just normal. We just have chats just to keep our name out there. But for the January chat, we felt that it was important because of all the devastation out in California with the wildfires that we wanted to do something for this chat to help. And so what we're doing is we are raising money this month for the Pasadena Humane Society, because there's a lot of devastation out there. A lot of houses were destroyed, and there's a lot of displaced animals that need help. So that's what we're doing this month. We're raising money for the Pasadena Humane Society. And if you can see, scrolling down at the bottom of the link, at the bottom of the page is the link where you can go and donate, and any help that you can give them would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so we're here to talk Firefly. So what I'm going to do is, I already told you I'm a brown coat and founder of the Rochester Browncoats, and I'm going to just go around the room and let everyone introduce themselves, and we'll start with Lynelle.
Hello, I am Lynelle. I'm the captain of the California Browncoats. I do really want to say thank you for what you're doing for the Pasadena Humane Society. It has been devastating, and while we're kind of spread out throughout California, nobody is untouched. No one has friends that doesn't have any friends or any family that has lost something, and having to give up your pet or find a home for a pet because you're currently unhoused is just adds one more really painful thing. So we're really grateful that that's your chosen charity for this event. We love that.
Nice. Chris?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Tobias. I'm the captain of the Rivers and Bridges Brigade of the Pennsylvania Browncoats, more commonly known as the Pittsburgh Browncoats. I've been captain since 2013, which is when I also took over as the local event coordinator for Pittsburgh's chapter of Can't Stop the Serenity charity screenings. We are really proud in the Steel City to have had a charity screening associated with Can't Stop the Serenity every year since its inception in 2006, including during the lockdown and pandemic. So that was a real point of pride for us, and we have no intention of letting that change on our watch. And, you know, sometimes I feel like, you know, David Byrne, I kind of look around and say, how did I get here? But you know, it's fun to, it's always fun, no matter whether you're at a con or whether you're involved in a campaign or a charity event. You know, you're always meeting new people that have an appreciation for Firefly and Serenity, and they're always wonderful folk. And I think more than anything, since I've been affiliated with this fandom, it's really been apparent to me that this fandom, more than any other that I know, really rallies around the idea of giving back. And there's so much charity work done in the Browncoat community, and I love being a part of that.
Yeah, that's great. Dylan?
I'm Dylan Hay-Chapman. I was the graphic artist on the series. I did not do Serenity. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that story, but the art department for the series was not allowed to work on the feature. So not for lack of trying, but I lived in Altadena for 7 years, and I have 2 rescues from Pasadena Humane Society. So that we picked up just doing a charity event. We saw 2 strays that came in together. They were really emaciated, and then next thing we knew, we were back the next day so that they could meet our other 2 dogs, but they're much healthier and happier now than when we first picked them up in 2012, I think.
Wow.
So they're almost 14. Anyway, I have a lot of friends in Altadena and that have been spared, and some that have lost everything. So this is a charity that, you know, I care a lot about, and it was a perfect little intersection of my life. So I'm happy to be here and hopefully help some people.
Great. Zach?
Hey everybody, I'm Zach Pensol. I was the project director and in-house artist for Toy Vault Incorporated, a toy company, toy and game company that about 10 years ago had the license for Firefly products. And so we put out Firefly plush, a couple board games. We made all sorts of just wacky stuff. Kind of like right at the beginning of when Firefly really became this big merchandising kind of giant. And I kind of feel like I'm like a mixture of a lot of the people here, because I'm only brown coat because of Steve. My work with the licensing the stuff, I'm sure that I've handled some stuff designed by Dylan, probably put his logos and stuff on packaging and all that. And then through my work through the toy company, I was taken out to San Diego Comic-Con by the Browncoats of California, and have been in contact with Lynelle for a few years now.
I want to butt in and say that Zach has designed all of our character coins. So we've done Book, and we did Kaylee, and we're working on, it's kind of a surprise. We're working on Mal. Yes, that's the book. Working on Mal for Comic-Con. And he's like, he also did our Serenity Valley coin, which was really popular and sold out, I think, a couple of times. We did different editions. So that's Zach. He's amazing.
Well, thank you. And so, yeah, so like I guess it's appropriate that I'm the last one here, because like I said, I feel like I'm kind of the mixture. Me and Chris haven't had any professional interactions yet, but who knows what will come from this. So.
That'd be great.
Yeah. All right. So I guess Firefly. I guess I want to find out from everyone here. What was your first introduction to Firefly, and why do you think it resonated so much with you? So for me, I can tell you that I remember watching Fox back in, 2001 and whatnot. And it was probably more like, 2002, early 2002, seeing ads for this show, from the creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Firefly. And I remember seeing the show, seeing the ads saying, that looks kind of cool. That looks like something I want to watch. But never paying attention to when they said it was going to air, but knowing that it would probably be on for a long time. So if I missed a couple of episodes, I would always be able to catch up because it looked like something. I like sci-fi, I like Star Trek and Star Wars. And so I said, I'm going to give this show a chance. And then next thing I know, I'm looking around and I'm like, what? And I never got to see it during its original Fox run. And I kick myself for that to this day. And I was like, well, if it didn't last, then maybe I don't know, maybe it wasn't very good. Yeah. So my brother, when we would go and we'd be out in stores and we'd like be at the DVD section, sometimes he would see it there and he'd point at that and say, that's supposed to be really good. And I would look at it, I'd pick up the box, I'd put it back down, I'd be like, oh. And so he got it for me for my birthday one year. I think it was 2004. And we finally sat down and watched it. And I said, oh, this is wow. And I just fell in love and have been in love ever since. And it was, I think, maybe 2007 or so, back when I was on MySpace, if anyone remembers MySpace, and I decided I wanted to see if there was a local browncoat chapter because I saw that there were regional browncoat groups that were popping up. So I said, I need to find the Rochester Browncoats and hang out with them because it'd be great to, and I went looking, totally expecting there to be a Rochester Browncoats, and there wasn't one. So I said, well, then I'm going to create a group on Facebook. And I created a group, and it wasn't very busy, didn't do a lot. Nathan Fillion was actually a member because back when social media was brand new, people would join, like Nathan Fillion joined. And there was no like blue check marks or anything, or just follow, you can't message. So I sent him a message on MySpace, and I said, hey, I created the Rochester Browncoats. Would you be an honorary member? You don't even have to post. You don't have to be part of the group in any way. Just you'd be a member. And would you please do that? And next thing I know, Nathan Fillion was a member of the Rochester Browncoats. And I made sure to post in the group, Nathan's a member. Please don't pester him with all these sorts of questions. He's just here because he's a browncoat and it's an honorary membership. And yeah, so that's kind of my beginnings into Firefly. Lynelle, how did you get into Firefly?
It was kind of the same way. I came to it after the show came out. I had actually was in college and I had this serious role-playing group, and they were a little bit nerdy. I'm sure you wouldn't expect that with a RPG group, but they were like, you should check out this show Firefly. And I was in college and I was like, I didn't have a TV. I was really serious. I took school very seriously. So I was like, I don't have time for nonsense. I only have time for serious role playing. And so I ignored it. And then I had a roommate in college who like a few years later, who was like, "You have to watch this show. My mom's got it on DVDs." And he would quote things from me. He's like, "Yeah, there's this part where they're like trying to get these cows out, and this guy is like, the guy's like, you can do this," but he's like, "I like whipping them," and he said these things, and I was like, that sounds really dumb. And I finally sat down and watched it, and I just fell in love, and I watched the entire show in one day. And then this was like shortly after the movie. We had the movie on DVD too. His mom had a DVD. We watched the DVD, and that was it. And then just like all the time, I was like, I want to live in this world. I want to find other people who want to live in this world. And so I started with like going to some meetup groups and, getting a little bit more involved, and then helping out with the local Can't Stop This Training, getting a little bit more involved. And then until I just ended up where I am right now, which is, how did I get here? I don't know. What am I doing? I don't know. But that's it. But Firefly remains like something I'm deeply passionate about. And I love the fact that it is a ways to a means. We use, we are very passionate about fundraising for different good causes. And to me, it's about keeping something that is kind of dead, keeping it absolutely alive through our love of it and our desire to live in that world, and using that kind of desire as a force for good in our own world. And that's why I'm still here and why I love it. I want to mention in the comments, Sean Crowley just asked for the link for donations. I don't know who's in charge of that, but I feel like we should share that. That's not my job, but I just saw it, so I thought
the little scroll disappeared.
I don't know. Sean, we're working on it, buddy. We have a book club.
Hey, it's rolling again. Sorry.
And Sean sometimes calls into we do like a live, like a video Zoom book club, and Sean I know from book club. And that's it. That's me. Oh, Steve, you are muted.
Steve, I think you're muted.
I am muted. Thank you very much. Yes, we are. Just to reiterate again, we're raising money for the Pasadena Humane Society. Any donation, any amount can help. So please consider donating. We have $90 in donations so far. Kristen Marie says. Kristen is the founder of Otherworldly Fundraising. Yeah. And if you are on YouTube following us, please give us a like, because the more likes we have, the better it gets the algorithms, so that more people see our stuff, and then more people like our stuff, and then we can raise more money in September when we do the big charities and event and stuff. So Chris, how did you get involved in Firefly?
Well, I'm hoping I'm not going to get lynched in the comments here. I'm kind of about to out myself here. I actually came to Firefly backwards. In 2005, my brother said that he wanted to go see this sci-fi film called Serenity. And he said, you're a sci-fi fan, you want to go. So I got a couple of my friends, and we joined my brother, and we went to the movies. And I knew nothing about Firefly. I knew nothing about Serenity. My knowledge of Joss Whedon's work was I had seen some of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I hadn't watched it religiously. So I was kind of discovering everything as the movie was playing out when I saw it for the first time, and I was completely blown away. It immediately, to me, seemed like it was one of the best modern sci-fi films ever made. In my mind, it was right up there with anything Ridley Scott did, like Alien or Blade Runner. The pacing was amazing. The casting was incredible. The story was layered and intelligent, and the language was just so fun. And that's what I do for a living. I'm a language teacher. And so I just fell in love with this movie, and I come out of the theater, and I'm gushing about this film. And my brother says, you probably would like it a lot better if you would have watched the series. And I looked at him, I said, there's a series? So then he gave me the DVDs, and I watched them, and I loved them. But I still as much as I loved the television show, never really thought about the idea of seeking out other fans. And then I think it was 2010, for I guess when the Science Channel got the rights to show Firefly weekly, and they were actually showing the episodes once a week with the original intros, and then they did that reunion special. I really, really just got hooked at that point. I mean, it was something I already loved, but there was something about seeing it once a week with the original intros that kind of made me feel like maybe I was making up for that experience that I had originally lost. And at that point, that's when I did what you did, Steve. I went online and I said, there's got to be a Browncoats group around here. And I found out that Pittsburgh had the Rivers and Bridges Brigade. I showed up to Can't Stop the Serenity Pittsburgh in 2011 dressed as Mal Reynolds. And when I went in for my first CSTS screening, the young woman that was the captain at the time, Mish Voss, she was like, hey, you know, we're short on volunteers. We need somebody to run a table. Does anybody want to run a table? And I said, I'll do it. And the rest is history. 2 years later, I'm the captain. But I mean, Firefly is a huge part of my life. And, you know, I'm fond of telling people, you know, you got those people that wear the little bracelets that say, you know, WWJD, what would Jesus do? And for me, in my mind, I'm always thinking, you know, WWMD, what would Mal do? I mean, that's kind of how I live. So, yeah, I mean, here we are, and it's, we're still flying, you know, it's amazing. I love it. I love everything about it.
Just a quick question for Chris. How many people have you kicked into jet engines?
No, none into jet engines, but I was a martial artist at one point, so I'm sure I kicked a few.
Excellent. Dylan, I know you probably knew a little bit about Firefly when it was on TV.
Yeah, I knew a little bit about it. It's funny you talking about hearing the promos and seeing you know, bumpers for it on TV. I remember, so I lived in Studio City, which is just over the hill from Fox Studios where we shot it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember packing up and driving home, and the promos would come on, and they sounded like this. I'm trying to remember the show that was on before it, but it was like
John Doe.
This week on
John Doe was
Profiler,
after, sorry.
or whatever on Profiler, they would give this big synopsis and then go followed by an all new Firefly, and that was it. And then I was thinking like, okay, well, they're airing episodes out of order now, so that's pretty bad. Oh, the World Series is coming up. We were getting preempted by baseball playoff games, then the World Series. So we just kept getting kicked out of visibility for, it felt like a month. And then we were waiting for the back nine, which they call it. So I think we were getting close to our 10th or 11th episode, waiting to hear if they were going to pick up the rest of at least 20. And they kept just giving us one at a time. Like they would say, we're going to do one more. We're going to do one more. So it was just, you know, perilous driving into work every day, wondering how it was going to go. But anyway, my first experience with it, I was a set dresser on Buffy. I started season 3. I think I was 25 years old. I had just gotten into the union. And the decorator, David Conniff, was the decorator on the movie that I did my first PA job when I was 20. So as soon as I got in, I gave him a call, and he said, yeah, I can get you some days on this show. And and it was Buffy. And I remember thinking, seeing Buffy airing, like the first 2 seasons, thinking, there's no way I'm watching this ever. Like, why are we doing TV shows of this movie? This is embarrassing for them. And then there I was thinking, like, never say never. That's always a good I don't know what I'm trying to call it, good philosophy. So anyway, season 3, I looked very childlike, and when we would go to Torrance High School to dress, the exterior teachers and administrators would try to send me back to class, even though I had like a tool belt on, or I'd be carrying like a 4-foot by 8-foot box hedge on a dolly. I even have a picture for you here. This is me. Oh, got a notification. This is me when I was a set dresser on Buffy. So, so the way I got onto Firefly, I knew Joss had this spinoff coming up, and a bunch of other colleagues had gone over to Angel, and I was just thinking, like, man, I would love to do anything but be a set dresser. And Kerry Meyer brought me in to interview. I've already known him for the 3.5 years that I was on Buffy. We started talking about what the responsibilities would be doing graphics for the show, and fortunately, I had already been. I don't know if you remember the three geeks, their lair, and they had that like schematic of their Ray. So like I was doing all that whiteboard stuff, and before I designed the cow chicken for the Double Meat Palace at Carrie's request. So I had already done a few things for Buffy. So then I ended up on Firefly, and we did the pilot, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. We had no money. We had very few people, and but I knew that I had made the right decision to jump over. Not that I was truly a Buffy fan by then, but I knew it wasn't a mistake to leave that show until it was canceled. And then I thought, yeah, maybe this is a bad idea. But anyway, but I won't filibuster here. You can come back to me.
Okay. Zach?
So I can't remember if this was mentioned here in the live thing, but I've got this really nerdy friend named Steve Fischer, who I see about.
It sounds nice. I'd like him.
Who I see about once a year at the Metropolis, Illinois Superman celebration for Superman geeks, as you can imagine. Steve is a geek of many colors, and it's not uncommon for people to get together and kind of form little groups and do little things, have little events related to other stuff. And so him and a few of our other friends were going to do a photo shoot. I can't remember if I ran into you guys or how it went, but like Steve was wearing this weird candy corn looking hat. Another friend was in a weird brown trench coat, just a small cluster of my friends. And I can't remember how it came up, but people just started screaming like, Zach, do you have a Hawaiian shirt? Do you want to be washed? And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I do have a Hawaiian shirt. Sure, whatever. So here, probably like within 15 minutes, I'm getting like a short blonde wig. I think it was a Fred from Scooby-Doo costume that one of our buddies was doing. Got a blonde wig thrown on me, had a Hawaiian shirt, and I'm taking pictures with my buddies, like pretending I'm flying a plane or something. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And of course I'd heard Steve talk about Firefly a few times and just kind of learned to tune him out. But for once I listened, and I was like, oh wait, yeah, I think I remember. I was like, is there a movie connected to that, Serenity or something? He was like, yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, somebody got me that on DVD years ago. I've never watched it. I'll go home and watch it. And then him and like everybody else in the group was like, no, stop, wait. And so then they explained it to me. They're like, okay, you need to watch the show first. Here's the history, blah, 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 blah. So I went home, and some weeks later, I checked out the show, and I was just like, oh no, I understand Steve Fischer now. So and I was lost from that point on pretty much. And then when I was working at a toy company at the time, and we were kind of always looking for like kind of obscure licenses to pick up. We had Godzilla kind of back before like all of the American Godzilla movies had started coming out, and Monty Python, not obscure, but just kind of like not super mainstream. And so I just started kind of like pushing some. We were a pretty small company, And I started kind of pushing everybody. I was like, hey, have you guys ever watched a show called Firefly? There's like nothing out there for it. QMX was making some of their stuff, like some of their model kits and stuff, but there was like nothing else Firefly out there. And I was like, guys, there's like a really big following for this. So I got my coworkers into it, and we campaigned, and we eventually got the Firefly license. So then I got to spend a few years making Firefly stuff. So basically from 0 to like 100, like within the span of like a couple years, maybe, as far as my fandom goes.
That's awesome. So I will say that for me, once I started watching it and realized how good it was, and then of course Serenity came out, there was the hope that there was going to be more live action. That, okay, Serenity, the hope was it's gonna do well, it's gonna reinvigorate the show. Universal saw something and took a chance. And so here's to hoping. So I would go out regularly when they were on sale and buy copies of the DVD box set. And I ended up having like 8 to 10 of them. And I called them the brown coat recruitment copies. And I would just hand them out to people. And that became my de facto go-to gift. If I got invited to a wedding, they were getting a copy of Firefly. If I had a birthday gift to give somebody, they were getting a copy of Firefly. It was like, you know what? They need it. They got to understand what this show is. They got to understand how good it is, and one of my friends, she was a coworker of mine. I gave her one of the brown coat recruitment copies, and it probably sat for 2 years at her house. And I kept asking her, and she hadn't watched it. So at one point I was like, you know what? And I sent her the links when it was on Hulu way back in the very beginning. And I said, here, watch this. Because for her, it was much easier when she was just sitting at a computer and she's like, oh, I got a link, and click it, than to have to take the DVD out, put it in. And she ended up loving it. And I've done so many things. When iTunes first got Firefly so that you could buy the actual series on iTunes, I went there and wrote a review of the series in kind of like dialect of the verse. And for the longest time, and I haven't looked at it in a while, but I was the most favorable review of anyone that had ever reviewed for that show, that had like the most thumbs up, because I probably was the first person to review it. So because as soon as it came out, I'm like, I'm going to review this right now. And I did. And then a lot of people just loved it. And so I've been trying like my best to convert as many brown coats as possible. And I mean, whether or not we get more live action, it's looking less and less likely, but you can always hope. And I remember seeing some of the other brown coat groups doing Can't Stop the Serenity, and seeing how popular they were. And like, I used to look at the California brown coats with awe and be like, there it is. That's it right there. They are like, they are where it's at when it comes to brown coat fans. And I mean, they go to San Diego Comic-Con every year, which I would love to do. And it's also interesting because I know, like, I think if I were at San Diego Comic-Con, yes, I would wander a little bit, but I would probably want to spend most of my time at the brown coat table, because that's where all the like-minded folks are going to come and talk to me. And that's where, like, every so often, Nathan decides he just wants to go to San Diego Comic-Con for the weekend, not as a guest, but just to walk around. And he shows up at the table. Hey, what's going on? I would just be like, Uh,
I don't want to burst any bubbles, but I've been the captain for 5 years and I have not met Nathan. There was a time before like he was so big that did happen
okay.
very regularly. I don't want to burst your bubble on this.
Okay.
Castle.
Doesn't
So
really
it was probably before Castle and
Yeah.
before the rookie
Yes.
and everything.
Yes. Sometimes his brother comes by
Okay.
and he looks kind of like Nathan, and you'll be looking at a guy and you'll be like, gosh, he really looks like Nathan Fillion. And then you'll realize that that's Jeff. And Jeff always says like, oh, Nathan says hi, but we don't really get Nathan visits anymore. That being said, we always need volunteers. So Steve, let's talk. Let's talk after this. Let's talk.
Oh.
We want to come. We need some volunteers.
So, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Lynelle. Don't want to steal your thunder.
Well, I just want to say, like I think it's very interesting that you view us that way. And I know Chris and I talk a lot, and Chris has told me something similar. But I will tell you, like, we look at you guys, and we're like, that's where we want to be, because we are not good at a social aspect. Like, we are pure fundraising. That's where our focus is, and that's where we're having a hard time breaking out. And I would love for us to just get together as people and like enjoy the show, enjoy the movie, enjoy the verse. And we're really not good at that. And I look at the other the groups who do this, like have this camaraderie and like joy of being together because of it, and joy of just role playing or exploring it or inventing new things for it. And like, we don't have that. And I'm super jealous.
We just did something really fun here in Pittsburgh. And we had done it before, but last year, I can't believe it's last year already, but in 2024, the Friday nights that Firefly originally aired coincided with the calendar in 2024. So for example, September 20th, which was the world premiere, well, the Fox premiere of The Train Job, was a Friday night in 2024, just like it was a Friday night in 2002. So in years when that happens, it just so happens that I have bootleg DVD copies of all of the original Fox broadcasts with commercials and all. So we pull them out, and this year, every Friday night when there was an episode, I hosted a watch party at my house, and the Browncoats would come and hang out, and we would watch whatever episode aired that night with the commercials. And Dylan, you were talking earlier about those promos, and when they'd say, "Let's get fired up with Firefly," we'd all look at each other like, "What was what?" But it was kind of like a time capsule, because it's neat to see what commercials aired back then and who the sponsors were and how they chose to market the show. We'd all seen the episodes, hundreds of times, but when you watch the original broadcast with a bunch of people communally, it's really interesting how you just see it in a completely different way. And so if they skipped an episode, we skipped an episode because we had the original broadcast. Obviously some of the best episodes of the show never did air on Fox. So on December 20th, we had our 2-hour, night when we watched the pilot that should have aired first and aired last instead. And what was really neat about it was all the way through the course of our doing this, we still had new people showing up all the way through. Like the very final week, we had people that were coming for the first time because other people had told them that it was fun. And we had people that it was the first thing they had ever done with our brigade was to come to these watch parties. And that was really cool. So the next time that would conceivably happen would be I think 2030. But we did it a few years ago, and we had a chance to do it in 2024, and it was a lot of fun.
That is a really cool idea. I like that a lot. I know for us, so back in the day when I had the MySpace Firefly group, it wasn't very busy, and there wasn't a lot of traffic at all. And I didn't realize at the time, I was like, people aren't posting anything. But then once I migrated over to Facebook and saw a bunch of the Firefly groups, I'm like, it's the people that are running the pages that are putting a lot of posts out there, engaging the rest of the folks to then become engaged themselves. And once I started doing that on the Facebook group, everything, came into play, and then it became quite active. And then people started saying, I think why don't we see if we can get together and do an actual Firefly, like a meetup at some point. So we had talked back and forth about it, and we decided to have a meetup, and I don't even remember where our first meetup was or when it was, but we had one. And then we decided, you know what, this is great. So we used to have monthly meetups, and we would do the first Monday every month for a long time. And we would always meet at the same restaurant, Harry G's New York Style Deli, which is right down the street from where my wife and I live. So we could just walk to it. And it was great because it was a double-sided place. You'd order your food on one side and you could sit there, or you could go to the other side where they had a bar, and they had board games that you could play. So they were totally fine with us just sitting there all night talking, and everyone that came would always get food to eat too. So it wasn't a big deal. And we would just sit there and talk, and we always had a really good time. And then COVID hit, and we stopped with the monthly meetups because nobody was going anywhere. And Harry G's closed during COVID, and they didn't reopen until toward the end of lockdown to try and just do takeout, and that ended up not working, and sadly they no longer exist. And we don't have, so we haven't had the last meetup we had, actually we had one, I'm gonna say back in either late September or no, it wouldn't have been. Yeah, maybe. Basically, we had every year when I do the Comic-Con, people come to the table and I tell them all about Firefly, and I have business cards that I hand out. And I tell them, oh, we want to get up and we want to have a meetup. We're going to try to get back into monthly meetups. And Rebecca, my wife this year, she's like, don't just say we want to have a meetup. Let's set a date right now. So when people come, you can say, oh, we're having a meetup at this point, because if you just keep saying we're going to have one, we're never going to have one. And we ended up having one at a local park. We had a few people show up, people that used to come to the other meetups. And that was fun. And that was it. And so I'm again saying we want to have another one. I don't have a date, but and maybe we want to do brown coat bowling or something, because it's just fun to get together. And we don't, we are all equal opportunity nerds. So we're not just talking Firefly, we're talking all different types of things, but it's Firefly that brought us together and made us friends. And so that's great.
Steve, I have a question for Dylan, if I can sneak it in here. I wondered, your perspective, it has got to be obviously a little bit different than ours. And I've always wondered this of anyone who worked on the cast or crew of a show, any show that I really love. When you watch Firefly or when you watch Buffy, are you able to detach yourself from it and watch it and enjoy it as a story? Or is it just, are you always still kind of like seeing behind the curtain and going, oh yeah, in that moment I remember we did that,
I can do both at the same time. So it's easier now just because of the amount of time that has passed. However, when I rewatch, I'll have memories like trigger when I'm watching it. So I tried to do a rewatch of Firefly before this, and I think I made it to, where am I? I think I only made it to Out of Gas. And then I tried to just sort of fast forward through and look at some scenes and some of the sets and sort of try and jog my memory. But at the time, so when I was working on Buffy, I stopped reading the scripts. And because it wasn't really integral that I do that. And so I enjoyed the show when it came on. I would just kind of look and go, oh, hey, there's all the pieces of vine that I stapled to the inside of a cave. Like, this is amazing. And but when Firefly came along and working in the art department directly, I had to read all the drafts. I had to try and read all the revisions when they came in. But so it's a little of both, especially during this rewatch this time. I'm one of the few people that has stood on the bridge. So watching those scenes again and watching watching sort of the visual effects as they were for 2002, there's a little ropiness there, but they're still really good. And I was kind of impressed with like the match moves that we did. Like there's some handheld shots on the bridge, like when Dortmunder is bringing him in, and it's a perfect move. And I thought, man, how did we do that? Like, good job, Zoic. I just thought, wow, this is really amazing. But then the memory triggers started coming in. So when we went aboard the derelict and you go into the sort of the cockpit and all of the shields are rolled down and all of the monitors are there. And I just thought, those are all the monitors from the bridge, because we just couldn't afford to get more to do another set. So every time we had another craft or another situation where we needed to look at monitors, that would all have to come out of the bridge, be installed in this next set, and then sometimes someone would have to stay late in order to get it back in to into Serenity for the next day's work. So like those kinds of things kept coming up. I kept seeing parts of the ship that I'd forgotten about. There were let's see, I'm trying to think specifically what another one of the triggers was. Inara's shuttle when she's on the Cortex. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but you probably can, but it's basically her interface is just a 17-inch MacBook Pro upside down with the screen hanging down. So we had to try and lock it in with a little cable, and because that MacBook Pro would lay totally flat, so we could get it all the way in behind the little swag curtain that's there. The problem was, so I did production graphics, so like I did set dressing and some of the props, but also I started doing more and more of the motion graphics too. So every time we did playback graphics in Inara's shuttle, I would have to generate them, and then I would have to render them out upside down. And then those would go to another technician who would basically program them so that they could watch her touch the screen and then hit the space bar to advance the next portion of the video in Shockwave. And I was watching just how good our touch screens were, and they weren't touch screens at all. I was so impressed by that.
That's cool.
And that was taking me out of it. I was just like going back to, and that's why I only got to Out of Gas, because it took me like 2.5 hours to watch each episode. Just because I was doing screenshots and I was laughing at stuff, and some of the lines that were fresh in my mind that I'd forgotten about. Still, my days of taking you seriously are coming to a middle. It's still my favorite line from the whole show. Nothing comes close to that. But anyway, yes, I can watch stuff and suspend my disbelief, but I can also sort of partition the brain and appreciate the other stuff.
All right. Well. So to continue on that vein, now that we're talking about some of your work on the show, I'm going to show some of the logos in some of the images that I've like grabbed from your website, and we can take a look. So this here says that it's Firefly logos unused.
Oh yeah,
So
those are from the pilot. So we were trying to figure out, this was just internal, so that we could put it on the scripts, so we could put it on the chairbacks for the actors. And I just sort of went through and did some things that felt a little bit science fiction, but I know we were trying to stay away from that. And then, of course, the one on the bottom left is sort of what the company that was hired to do the promo sort of based their version off of. But we used the top right for our car cards to sort of identify crew members. You put it on your dashboard when you're, on location or for security. And then we put that on the chairbacks as well. But, the calligraphic scripty one ended up being what the show is, with the flaming pass through and all of that stuff too. So that was pretty cool. So I didn't design the main title, but I definitely nudged it pretty hard. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I know I've seen the car cards, the top right. I've seen those online before, and knew that was something that the cast and crew would use when they parked, and I was always looking at that going, oh, that's nice. And then this one here, we were talking about bridge screens and Firefly screens.
Yeah, those are for so Dave Conniff, the set decorator, was a really resourceful guy. I think he just retired. And when I was working on Buffy, we used to go downtown to this municipal building where in the basement they just had dumpsters full of things that the city was getting rid of. And in there was a bunch of Motorola police walkie-talkie systems. And so we nabbed, I think, probably close to 30 of them. They're all over the ship. And so the idea was we were trying to create these sort of displays that would be swapped out or burned in and animated if necessary. And we even built in the thumb ID locks. I don't think we ever see them use it on screen.
Huh.
However, they're there. We modified every single one of them, put them in a little partition, and we had an electronics guy come in and build them out so that they would light when we needed the thumb printing. And I just don't think they might have just gotten forgotten. They're there if you can get possibly a close-up. But anyway, the one on the left is the engine room. It's engine display. It's based on the set designer Will Batt's drawings, and Colin DeRuin, who ended up being the art director on the series. He was a set designer on the pilot as well. That's based on their drawings of the engine parts. And then the second one, in the blue one, is based on one of Carrie Meyer's original layouts of the structure. And then, of course, the others are just sort of amalgams of that. And they are, I look at them now and I think what I would do differently, but I still really like them. I think they look great. Yeah. And they look great on screen too. I was trying to get the best screenshot I could of these as I was rewatching. So I probably wasted like 5 hours of my time just trying to get some good images of these. I actually plan on, I have my Instagram handle down there. I actually am pulling a bunch of stuff that I'm going to try and share over the next week of Firefly stuff. I
Oh,
think
very
some of
cool.
the stuff I've never shared before, or might have never been seen before. So I'm gonna do that. If anyone's interested,
Yeah.
just tune in there. I'll try and put out one post a day, and I'll just go until I run out of stuff, probably. So
That's awesome.
so if anyone's interested, but yeah, go ahead with the next thing.
Okay, right here.
Oh, this. Any hardcore fans, help me out here. Do we see any of the like we see portions of, I think, the one of the glove bits in the plastic, the big yellow like suit containers, but these are dressed all on the inside, so that if you had to dress in a vacuum, like you would be locked up in this clamshell, and you would be able to get in. So I have the Vitruvian spaceman there in the center, and the idea was hopefully someday we would get to these being animated little displays inside. But
Okay.
in case you guys didn't know, the show got canceled, so
Oh,
we we didn't get to go that far.
When was that? Who do I talk
Oh
to?
yeah, it was some time ago. Yeah,
Oh,
I know it's pretty fresh. It is for me.
yeah, too soon.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
Oh yeah, there's a good
Oh,
close up. That's
okay, so
my
that's
photo.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the engine.
Yep.
Oh, and one thing I will just notice. So we see in this screen, we see the keyboard, and then next to the keyboard, we see something that says PAL, which is the PAL device. I have one here, and these are actual alarms that firefighters would wear back in the day, and they were connected to their suit. And the design of this was so that if this stays motionless for any length of time, because you're thinking if a firefighter is inside a building and they're fighting a fire, they're constantly going to be moving, and this is always going to be moving. But if it stays still for like maybe 30 seconds or so, then an alarm goes off. And if you've ever heard the alarm, it is the most piercing, loudest, because I used to be a volunteer firefighter, the loudest, most piercing. And it's designed so that if the firefighter gets trapped and ends up passing out or falling down and they can't move, this will alert people to where they are. And from what I'm to understand, these were all old, and the production company bought a whole bunch of them and ended up putting them all over the ship, because it's what they, it's what they would use to talk with, because it looks like a walkie-talkie. And so they were just set dressing everywhere so that it would look like, anywhere you're on the ship, you might just find one and you could pick it up and say, "Hey Mal, what's going on?" or something like that. And so I'm very thankful to have one. And this is actually a production used copy. I can't say whether or not it was screen used, but it was part of the production of the huge lot that they bought for the show.
I would venture a guess as to say it was probably screen used. If you have it, I think we got all of them up. And if it was if we didn't need it, we probably didn't hold on to it. So I would say with like a 99% certainty that it was screen used.
Mm-hmm. That is super exciting. Okay, so yes, that, and then here, this is something that I'm very interested in, the Jane shirts, because so you all know that, you can see that I'm wearing a Jane Cobb hat, and I have cosplayed as Jane. So if I'm going to a con and I'm going to dress in Firefly gear, even though I own an actual brown coat from Abbey Shot Clothiers when they made brown coats, I generally dress as Jane Cobb because I've got the hat, and I figured, why not? So I have several Jane Cobb t-shirts and love Jane Cobb t-shirts, and I'm assuming that you did a bunch of the designs for the Jane Cobb t-shirts.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm flying my own flag here right now. For the
Nice.
pilot, I did this one and another one. I think it was like Kimco or something like that. I can't remember. And they were just going to be sort of kind of one-offs. And then when we got into the series, I did a couple more. I had a little bit of time, and Costumes came in and asked if we, had any more. And then Shauna Terpsitz asked me if I'd be interested in trying one every episode, like if I could squeeze it into my duties. And I thought, oh yes, like this will be priority for me now.
And just
because
sorry, just to let everyone know, he
Go ahead.
referenced Shauna. She was the costume designer for Firefly. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So I was, thrilled to do these, and we would come up with them. Carrie Meyer came up with a couple of them. Shauna had some ideas. I came up with a few, and even Adam Baldwin had some ideas. But we were really sort of pushing into it. We were going to explore it more and have his shirts get, more and more esoteric and weird. And this was also in the early days of, provenance. We would get things physically and modify them. Sometimes I thought like, oh yes. So here's another one of these flashbacks that's coming in. I pitched like if anyone, I don't know how old you are, but if you remember Big Johnson shirts, just how from the 90s, just how kind of like weird and they're kind of funny, but they're also kind of gross. And I was pitching like, this is where Jane should be, right? Like we should be doing this. Like we should have them be kind of funny, kind of, and we didn't really get to explore that side again, but that's what we were going for. We wanted Jane to be just sort of, he would pick up any gas station T-shirt or any like mineral pack or energy booster, and that was sort of him. And so yeah, we just tried to, it was going to be cartoon characters, stuff for small children, stuff that was not appropriate for children. It was just going to be, but we were limited to 8.5 by 11 iron-on printouts because at that time, 2002, graphics were really expensive. Even printing on full color prints were, I think, in the $25 a square foot range.
Wow.
Vinyl graphics were there, but you couldn't like print onto vinyl and cut them. So we did a lot of stencils. And if you watch the first, second episode, Jane's got the little shirt with a little insignia here. And you can see that the white from the iron-on is still inside of the counters, the holes in the Chinese character, just because they couldn't cut that out, and razor blade that out well enough. So, and I'm not sure if this blue sun, I think, is the correct translation. We had the wrong translation from our translation team for the first few appearances. And then when the show started airing, we were getting notes like, it says green sky. You should probably fix that. And, it was kind of embarrassing, but, we didn't have Google Translate to sort of check things. We didn't have a way to get all of the characters out in like high resolution. So a lot of times we would get characters from our translator and she would send them to me, and then I would have to hand copy them into whatever we were doing, and every single one of them I had to redraw or redo in order to make them usable at all. So there was just the technology at the time was a bit of a slowdown, but it was fun. It was fun, exhausting.
So, you design so I like the blue sun logo on the shirt, and do we know had Blue Sun as the evil corporation been known at that point as the focal corporation, or just
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was right off the bat. Blue Sun was going to be the overarching kind of Amazon of
Okay.
the verse, where like that bomb that was floating in space with the Blue Sun can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, what was
Crybaby?
it? Crybaby.
Yeah.
Cry, baby, cry.
So that was there's going to be a food stuff from them, and they would kind of make everything, but also be sort of bankrolling the bureaucracy that is behind River and her
Oh, okay.
situation. Yeah, as far as I understand it, but it was right off the bat, like, Blue Sun's going to be this thing. They're going to have these gloves, and we're going, that was going to be the big tie. Obviously, the writer's intent might have changed slightly, or but that never, or it hasn't, and it just never got out. But that was explicit that Blue Sun was going to be our big bad.
I'm a little embarrassed to admit that the first time I watched it through, when River slashed Jane's chest at the beginning of Ariel, I believe it is, and she said he looks better in red. Like, it wasn't until I had watched that episode a few times that I realized that she wasn't attacking Jane, she was attacking the Blue Sun logo. And when she said he looks better in red, you have Blue Sun, Red Sun, and it was Blue Sun that she was was against, not Jane. Yeah, right. It's that moment where you go, oh wait, there's something bigger going on here. I always tell people that I envision Blue Sun as being a merger of Amazon and Disney 500 years in the future.
That's fair.
So we have a picture of tune in March to see Steve cosplay as Jane Cobb. Details TBA. I wonder what that's. Oh, I can't tell. Tune in. So here's a picture of Jane Cobb wearing his Blue Sun shirt. Who designed that tattoo? Is that something?
That's a good question. That would have been makeup. That would have been involved in that. So if they had, I've done other shows where they've come to me for it, but can you show it again?
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna lean in here.
It's a red dragon. I've seen a very close up. So there's a red dragon. His head is like at the bottom part, and right above him is yin yang, and then his tail goes up all the way back.
Yeah, I'm guessing that makeup would have had someone do that. And back then there were shops that you could other makeup artists that could get your tattoos done like that, no problem.
And then one big question I have. So is this something you had a hand in?
Yeah, I did that. So that was in, I had a note to do some patches for Mal, and so that was in the first batch. I did like 3. There's one that was a skull with an eye patch. Then there was this, and I'm trying to remember what we used all 3. I think the other one had some lightning bolts, and Joss picked this one for for his jacket, and obviously, I'm sure everybody knows about this. Costumes asked, which way does it go? And Josh said it points down. And they took that to mean the star points down. And that's why we ended up with an upside down patch that one time.
Can I tell you that
But-
Shauna, people would ask Shauna that all the time. And the thing that she took to saying was that when you wear it upside down, it's a sign that you are asking for help, that you're in trouble. So that she said, she started telling people that's why it was upside down.
Yeah, that's a great save too. And it helps with the lore. And I will say that too. But I've also heard the other story, I think from the costume assistant, that they didn't mean to do it that way. So, the lore is the lore.
Yeah,
Lynelle, you're right.
It was a mistake.
You're absolutely right.
But as
Anna
someone
told me that too.
I think she got tired of it. She was like, "This is it. It's meant to be that way."
Well,
Yep,
and I'll
that's it.
say,
It's canon.
because when I first started Rochester Browncoats in designing our logo, well before, and this is our logo here, and well before I designed this logo, I had created another one, and I wanted to know what was the correct way, because I would go online and look, and I would see it both ways. And my question was, well, which way is it? And also, a lot of people, because when you first see it in that first episode, when it is upside down, the star also looks black. So a lot of people thought that it was the black star when it's actually navy blue. And so once I found out it was the correct way, and then ended up, getting my Firefly jersey, and Chris has got one too.
I have the one Chris has.
And I was like, great. And I know there is some contention with, there's some Firefly fans who refuse to accept it the proper way, because that's not the way it was on screen, and I'm just going to go by canon. And I'm you know what, I can accept both. I mean, I prefer when I display it, it's going to be triangle down, star point up, and yeah. So
Well,
can I?
Well, I was going to say, if I may just add in, if I can just have a little bit of sympathy, because I was the graphic designer, in-house artist, project director at a toy company, mass producing stuff for Firefly fans, having to decode all of this stuff, having to look online, okay, wait, sometimes it's upside down, but only in circumstances like this, and certain contingents of the fandom refuse to accept it this way. So which part do we do? And it was tough. It's probably took a few years off my life trying to stress out about that, because I didn't want the brown coats, I didn't want to open my blinds one day and see a sea of brown coats coming to kick down my door because I'd put the wrong logo on the wrong packaging or whatever.
As a PA brown coat, as a PA brown coat, the way I've always looked at it and the way I've explained it is, I know the first time I visited Gettysburg, and I went and I looked at the museum in Gettysburg, and I looked at, they have a room in Gettysburg. It's amazing, where they have all the rifles that they found on the battlefield. And they start on one end of the room with the oldest rifle, and then they go all the way to the other end of the room with the newest rifle, and they have them arranged chronologically. And in the same battle, which was the battle that inspired Joss to come up with the idea of Firefly, you have soldiers who were on the battlefield using muzzle loaders, and then you have soldiers that were on the same battlefield using carbine rifles. So when I think of the Browncoats, and I think of the fact that they didn't have the resources that the Alliance had, they were going to have to make do with whatever they had. So not every uniform is going to be uniform. All it had to do is be something that was recognizable to other people that were fighting on the same side. So if your star is black and my star is blue, but the symbolism is the same, I know you're on my side. And that is what we would have to go with, because we've got bigger problems than whether our uniforms all look the same. And I think that's kind of how you justify it. And that's, again, when you think of the brown coat fandom, I really have never encountered the kind of animosity where, you know, there are other fandoms that'll tear each other apart over this stuff, but with
Yeah.
brown coats, it's never like, oh, you've got a black star on your, no, you know.
Yeah. I wish I had you to write like that, everything you just said about like the explanation, like in just kind of the like the legalese that had to go on all of our packaging just to be safe. But yeah, I thankfully I never encountered a negative experience with any brown coats as a result of any of the stuff. There always was every now and then there would be a little bit of trepidation. I remember kind of in the early days of us announcing the line, because I think Firefly merchandise was such a new thing, because like I said, I think only QMX was making anything at that point. There was this kind of trepidation, I think, that people had that we were just trying to milk it, you know, like that we didn't care. It's like, some stupid toy company just probably never even heard of Firefly, you know. And like it was like I saw enough of those comments online that I was like, how could I convey to these people that we only have it because like I fell in love with the show and pursued the license. But thankfully, like I said, once we got it out, I feel like hopefully people realized that we had only the best of intentions.
My impression of it was that it was incredibly detailed. I mean, it was very detailed. It was, dare I say, even complex. Now, I'm not a big gamer, whether it's video games or board games. So for me, the draw was, oh, look, there's Firefly stuff. So that was what led me to even, you know, try to collect any of it or play any of it. But as a fan, I was always impressed with the, you know, with the level of detail. And I kind of wonder, like, with your team working on this, was everyone a brown coat? Was everyone familiar with the show, or was it kind of like, here's what we want you to do, like just do it just like this?
So our company itself was really, really small. There were really only 3 of us, kind of like actual employees just for the company. And I introduced Firefly to them. But then when we started pursuing stuff, you know, a lot of my job was either doing artwork myself or finding artists online. And so I would take to Firefly forums, to fan forums and stuff, and like find people who were fans, because, and like I said, the toy company, we handled a lot of like fan favorite sort of stuff. And that was kind of always something I really wanted to do, is like, I wanted to get fans involved in making the stuff, because I didn't want to be that soulless company just churning out stuff who was getting, you know, if it was Godzilla, who's getting Godzilla wrong or whatever. Like I wanted it to feel right. And so I would pull in fans. So probably our biggest project, just as an example, was Firefly Fistful of Credits. It was this big board game we made. And there we go. So that's the logo I designed for that, for the game. But the majority of the layout was done by the game's designer, guy named David Coffey, who he was a really big, or he was not, he had never heard of Firefly. But I'd played kind of the early version of this game before there was a Firefly theme tacked onto it. I told him, hey, here's what we're thinking. He watched through the whole series, and then basically, like, if you could have seen the original game that inspired Fistful of Credits, like it was like a kindergarten level game. I mean, I hate to say that, it wasn't, but I mean, just in terms of like, it was kind of a by the numbers, like mission hunting, you know, treasure hunting game. He watched the show and was like, okay, I can do so much more with this. And then he just dialed it up like so much and just made this incredible game that I'm still super proud of. So he was new to it, but like just in the process of working on it, he became a legitimate fan, you know. And then there was a second graphic designer who we had doing the packaging for that. She was somebody I found. Her name's Frances Falder. She was somebody I found just on a forum somewhere, who was just a big Firefly fan. She had made, I forget what it was she had made, but it was clear that she, you know, was a professional graphic designer and all that. And I was like, hey, if I'm going to bring, if I need to bring somebody in to work on this, it might as well be somebody who not only knows what they're doing in terms of the tools and the skill, but somebody who knows the show and loves it and can pour some of that into it.
And I know, I mean, and you didn't like just make, okay, we're just going to make a game a Firefly game because we have the Firefly license. So we're going to make Tall Card because
Yeah, okay. I was about to ask about that. Dylan, did you have any hand in the production of the Tall cards that we see?
No, I think Randy Erickson had those made at a prop house, or so. No, I didn't have anything to do with those. I think those are all Randy, and I wish I could see the reverse side of those cards.
Well,
but
so what we're seeing
yeah,
there.
Watching the show, and I saw them, I was like, oh, I didn't do those. And then that must have been Randy. Those look great.
Well, so what Steve just presented, I actually did based on what we could find, kind of like you were saying earlier.
Well done.
Being the, of course, it was 2013-ish when we were making all these products. So the internet was a helpful resource, but it wasn't the most helpful resource. And so like I remember going like just frame by frame, like trying to get the best look that I could of like that plum card. And we were trying to figure out like, okay, what do we know is in the game? What can we parse here? And like, what can we extrapolate from that? So the plum was the given one. The rest of the suits, I mean, it was pretty much like up to us. We went with mahjong tiles to represent the numbers, because we kind of, the way the logic we went about it was like, this will become in the future so many different, just like, you know, Asian cultures and Western cultures are kind of mixed in the Firefly verse. We kind of figured like games kind of experience a similar thing. So Tall Card was like a marriage of mahjong, poker. There was a little bit, some of the cards were tarot imagery. And so we're just like, this is just this weird mishmash of every different culture, you know, that had a card associated with it. And funny thing, and Steve, you might have been the one that told me about this. I can't remember. They ended up they did a Firefly comic, and on the cover, you see Saffron playing Tall Card, and they used our card images for that.
Yes.
And
yeah, it's a picture of Saffron sitting at a table. She's sitting in the Han Solo pose where she's leaning back. She's got a hand up. She's got a foot forward, and she's holding one of the Tall Card, one of the images that they had created for Tall Card. And it was not, I don't think it was the plum, because it was one that when you looked at it, you're like, that's definitely from Tall Card. And we're going to get back to Zach, but what I want to do right now is just remind people that we're Otherworldly Fundraising, and this is our January Firefly chat. And we are raising money for the Pasadena Humane Society, because there are a lot of displaced animals due to the horrific fires that have been out in California recently. And we want to do all we can to help out these animals. So, please donate if you can. The link is scrolling along the bottom. And so to get back to Zach, one of the things that they also did was they created some mini plushies. And
I don't know Lynelle's cat's name.
I was afraid you were going to show that, Steve, because it occurred to me when we were looking at Jane's tattoo, I was like, I don't think I included the tattoo on Jane's arm in the plushie. So
yes. And here are pictures of Jane Cobb in male plushies. And
so, sorry, just to add in, because like I feel like looking at these now is kind of odd, but like those were we started putting those out right on the cusp of when Funko Pops were becoming a thing, because prior to doing the pop, some of you all might remember they made plushies that were kind of the same proportions as like the Funko Pops, and those were getting kind of popular. And so kind of looking at those, we're like, hey, let's kind of latch on to the little miniature little plushies thing. So that was the inspiration for those.
I have that Mao plushie behind my desk at work.
Well, and thank you for purchasing it for one. And two, Steve has a particularly special one.
Oh yeah, so it's in the other room. I don't have it with me right now, but I have the actual Jane Cobb prototype. And he's got the hat, he's got everything except the Blue Sun logo is just a piece of paper that Blue Sun was printed out on and it's taped to the shirt. There was a question for Lynelle. What is the name of your cat?
The one who was just up here is George. I did not name him. The one prior to that, the black and white, is Vex, and Vex, to vex is to bother, and he's very bothersome.
Oh, nice.
So that is his name. But George gets real weird about hair, and I don't know if you saw that he was trying to like bite my hair, and that's why we had to. Sorry, George. He gets just pulling.
So Book Girl has a question. Book Girl being Rebecca, my wife. She wants to know if the love of Firefly and Serenity has completely impermeated anyone else's lives. For example, we have a cat named River, and she is. If someone says, "Well, is she named after River from Firefly or River from Doctor Who?" We say, "Yes, she is." And we actually had a brown coat wedding. So Rebecca and I got married on September 20th, 2014, Unification Day. Glorious day for all the proud members of the Allied Planets. And we got married at my mother-in-law's farm in her back field. I wore my brown coat. Rebecca wore a brown dress. And in lieu of flowers, she carried a Kaylee parasol. And we invited anyone that wanted to come dressed in character to come dressed in character. So a friend of ours came dressed as Badger. Another friend of ours came dressed as River in the battle dress that she wore at the end of Serenity. And another friend of ours, Dave, I had talked to David. So we, like I said, we were married on September 20th. Earlier that year in June at the annual Superman celebration, I went to talk to Dave and I said, how would you like to become a minister with the Universal Life Church and marry Rebecca and I? We want to have a brown coat wedding, and Dave cosplays as Malcolm Reynolds. And we would like you in character to marry us as Malcolm Reynolds. So he agreed. And he dressed as Mal, and he put a little white like collar around his Mal outfit to look more kind of like minister like. And what his speech and the what he said when he married us was basically he was in character, and he was saying that he had kind of like a sermon that had been written by Shepherd Book that had never been used. It was intended for the wedding, but Shepherd Book unfortunately was no longer around to be able to marry us. So it fell to him to marry us, and he was using the words of Shepherd Book, and he married us in a brown coat ceremony. And it was super fun. And yeah, I loved it. Oh, and on the day that we got married, September 20th, a good friend of mine, Zach Pensol, was with his girlfriend, and they were at a convention, and Jewel State happened to be at the convention, and they got a video with her congratulating us on our wedding, and like sent it to me, and I was like, oh.
All right, I have a question for you, Steve. Actually, it's for your wife. Did you see Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't mean this in any way, like to imply that she was not 100% in for a brown coat wedding, but I do want to know, was this the price of getting married, or was she like 100% it's brown coat wedding or nothing?
Okay, so here's the thing. Oh, guess who's coming to visit?
It was my idea to have the brown coat wedding.
Well, so she originally wanted to get married on Halloween.
Yeah.
And I go to my mom's house and run Steve's House of Death and scare all the kids in the neighborhood. And I've been doing that for over 30 years now.
It's not a successful Halloween unless one small child cries.
So in my head, I was like, if we get married on Halloween, it would kind of screw up my, and I understand I probably should have said, yes, let's get married on Halloween. Because it's Halloween. It's my national holiday.
Our national holiday.
It is our national holiday, but Steve's House of Death would have suffered because of that.
Yeah.
And so she wanted to get married, and she said, well, what if we do some like a themed wedding? And I said, well, how about September 20th? And I was looking at the dates, and we were trying to figure out, and I'm like, ooh, 2014, September 20th falls on a Saturday. So how about if we get married? And that's like, Unification Day holiday. And she says, yeah. And so we did. And I will say that when I met my wife, I knew, like I was talking with a coworker of mine that I used to work with. And she introduced me to, oh, here's my coworker, Rebecca. And so we were talking, and we ended up something about, she said how she liked Buffy. We had started talking about Star Trek, and she said she liked Star Trek. And I was like, who? Okay. And then she started talking about Buffy, and I'm like, oh, so if you like Buffy, I take it you've seen Firefly. And when I asked her that question, she got the Kaylee looking at the strawberries for the first time look in her eyes. And I'm like, uh-huh. And so, like, she was a brown coat before I met her. And it worked out. And my license plate reads brown coat, BRWNCOAT. And she's told me since then that there was like a couple of times when she was actually driving in her car before she met me. And she got behind this Jeep that had a brown coat license plate. And I had like a Superman sticker and brown coat license plate and United Federation of Planets logo on the back window. And she's like, I don't know who that person is, but I really want to meet them. And well, here we are married now.
That is an amazing story. I'm very glad that you guys were both, it was a mutual thing. That's really wonderful.
Yes.
Good for you guys. Good for.
Thank you.
Living it.
So got a question for Zach. You had mentioned, working at Toy Vault, getting the licensing and stuff. What was it like trying to navigate? Okay, we want to do this, but oh, wait a minute. Is that Universal? And wait, is that Serenity? Is that Firefly? Because did you have the license just for Firefly?
Well, so something Dylan said earlier about how the changeover and how they didn't want the same art team and everything, it got me kind of remembering that, because the truth is I don't know, and I'm not sure Fox knew either, because when we asked, they told us that we were allowed to use like screen grabs from Serenity. We could not use any logos or anything. So we couldn't use the Serenity logo. Like the branding was its own thing. But if I recall, I remember looking into it and trying to figure it out, because like I said, they didn't really even seem to be fully aware. And not to make them sound bad at their jobs. It's just that Fox is such a big thing that their licensing department is its own brand. So those people, they're handling the licensing for everything Fox owns. So they're not going to be specifically like, Firefly oriented or anything. But I remember looking up, and I feel like maybe around that time, there was something having to do with Fox had acquired the rights to Serenity. And Dylan, if you know any of what I'm talking about, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I'm not really well versed on that either. It was Fox production, and then when Disney bought Fox, I think it all came in under there. And I'm not really sure how the distribution deal went for Serenity, but I can tell you that Buffy was on CW, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, but the pilot was created by Fox. So CW would buy the show, so Fox would make the show for them, and so everybody's sort of the interplay there complicates things. And I don't even remember what the Buffy feature, what studio did that one. Maybe it was Fox. I can't remember right now, but that's part of the problem. So whoever decided to pick up the distribution for Serenity, that would be, I guess, all up to Joss, what kind of deal he had. I know that I'm not going to say I know. I'm vaguely familiar with a notion that that Firefly was Joss's third show with Fox. So it went Buffy, Angel, and then this was to part of his contract with them. But I don't the legal entanglements are foreign to me.
Yeah, and that's basically what we had to go through, because we were a small toy company. We didn't have a big legal team to explain it to us. I do remember, like I said, I feel like sometime around there, maybe closer to the end of us having license, I remember distinctly looking at it was a Firefly or a Serenity comic. I think it was the trade paperback of one of the older Serenity comics.
Yeah.
And I compared the legal text in both of them, just kind of as a point of curiosity. And I think the trade, when it came out, it had different legalese that explained Serenity, blah, 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 Firefly, yada, yada, Fox. Whereas the original comics only mentioned Universal and Serenity. So there was, at some point, there had to have been some sort of marriage between, like, where Fox took the rights to Serenity, but again, it was
comics are a little different. Dark Horse Comics had the license for Serenity, and they were the ones that published the Those Left Behind, which was the mini series of comics that Joss wrote to bridge the gap between Firefly and Serenity. Then after Serenity came out, Dark Horse released a number of comics that were related, loosely tied to the movie, using some of the characters from the show. But usually those comics were written by either Joss or his brother. And then Dark Horse lost the license, and Boom Studios got the license for Firefly. And somehow, this is the part that I don't quite understand, somehow along the line, Boom Studios, because they picked up the license for both Firefly and Buffy, and Boom Studios also somehow got permission to distribute reprints of the Dark Horse comics in trade paperback form. And now, of course, Boom Studios has let the license for both Firefly and Buffy lapse. So at the moment, nobody has the comics license for either one. And it's interesting. I'm kind of waiting to see where it's going to end up from here.
Yeah.
But I know that it was always Serenity. Like I have a bunch of them on the shelves here to my left, and anything that has Serenity as the title is Dark Horse. Anything that has Firefly as the title is Boom Studios.
Yeah, and I think it was about that time of that changeover that is whatever went on that married the two and allowed Boom to then distribute the Serenity books. Kind of like Dylan said, I don't know the I could never fully understand or know the whole legal aspect. As long as we had an email from the Fox people saying we could use the Serenity stuff, we're like, okay, our hands are washed. If somebody sues us, then we can pass it on to them. So that was kind of our biggest concern. But we did use, I think, in our game Out to the Black, which had a lot of like screen grabs, I want to say we might have had some Serenity shots in there, and if we did, it was only because we were told we could. Though I know that they also told us that we could not use screen grabs that used any characters other than the principal characters. So like we couldn't have like Badger, we couldn't have Saffron, we couldn't have. I'm pretty sure they told us that we were not allowed to use any of them, like screen grabs representing, like containing those actors' likenesses, because they didn't have the permission.
Yeah.
So that was kind of.
You're not alone. Recently, we were told with Can't Stop the Serenity that we were supposed to keep our marketing and our imagery to the movie, and we were instructed by the global entity not to use, for example, you mentioned characters, not to use characters like Badger or trying to think of who else, well, Saffron, that only appeared in the series at CSTS events. And that all came about since Disney acquired Firefly. So for us, we do a lot of carnival games at Can't Stop the Serenity Pittsburgh, and a lot of our carnival games had a lot of stuff from the series. As a matter of fact, we had one game that was called Badger's Dodgy Dice, and so our crew was like scrambling to rebrand everything before our event, because we found that out just a couple of months before we were going to put on our 2024 event. So, but it's always tricky. I look forward to the day where they no longer care about which one is which. It's all just one verse.
Yeah.
Can you use Fanty and Ringo?
We did. As a matter of fact, we changed Badger's Dodgy Dice to Fanty and Mingo's
Okay.
Dice. That's how we got around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and funny, earlier Steve showed the picture of the Fistful of Credits game. That one, so we used art elements. Like we had an artist like draw the characters to be represented in that. And part of the reason for that was because we thought, well, if we ever do an expansion, we had some ideas for expansions where like Saffron would be a playable character and so on and so forth, that we could have them drawn rather than have to rely on photos of them. And then there's also, you see some like random like grunts and stuff, like they're on the like the little chips and stuff, and we're like, well, if we can't use somebody from the show, some extra, then it's going to have to be one of us having our face photoshopped in there. So that's why we actually went for artwork for those.
Nice.
The game looks great, by the way. All the merch that I've seen. Yeah, that was one of my favorite things. Since I'm sort of locked out of the playground, since all of my work was work for hire, I can't really do a lot with that. I mean, I can do fan art and I can make some things, but I can't look to be profiting from it. Mm-hmm. So it is really fun to see what the licensors have done with it. What I have that Jane Cobb plushie. It's just really fun to see the merch out there. Good job. It looks great.
It was so fun. And Fistful of Credits, I think I'll go to my grave being proud of that. And I wish I could say that I had more like of an artistic involvement on it, but that was kind of more, it was such a big beast. I was kind of more the like, contact this guy, I hired this guy. Well, I did do a few little things here, but I mean, the team that I assembled for that was just great. And they like the game. I'm so proud of the game. I wish so. if any of you all, and I'm sure nobody here can sympathize with Fox being kind of shady and messing with stuff a little bit. Generally speaking, in licensing, it's often considered that there's a gentleman's agreement that if a company is licensing one, say a specific type of thing, say hats, that even if they don't sign an exclusivity contract, you're not going to be like really quick to give out another hat license. Again, that's kind of a gentleman's agreement thing, and I'm sure bigger companies care a little less about that. But so when we announced that we had the Firefly license, it was like February or January of 2013, I think. Unbeknownst to us, Gale Force 9 had also just gotten the Firefly board game license, and I mean that clearly this was a deal that was happening simultaneously. So I mean they weren't doing it before we were, or didn't try to steal anything from us and vice versa. But they put out Firefly the game, I think right before or sometime around the same time that we put out Fistful of Credits. And that game was just so insanely popular that it just like, we did eventually sell out of Fistful. I mean, it was a profitable game for us, but like, it wasn't the monster that we kind of hoped it would be, because like Firefly the game came out and we're like, oh, well, good for them. We couldn't begrudge them. And like I said, fans really seem to love it. I never actually played it, but I'm sure many of you have. So no begrudging there, because they got the game license too. So good for them. But in fact, I even seem to remember we were considering Firefly the game as just, kind of a name for ours, and maybe Fox was a little bit like, actually, no, don't go with that.
While we're on the topic of games, Will Batts, Batts, he was the set designer on the series. He was actually developing a game to be used on the show. So he would probably still know the rules, everything that he was working on at the time. And, maybe enough nudging could get him to finish it. So it'd be like sort of quasi-official. But I remember trying to help him with sort of some of the design elements of it. But that was in the works. Like that was a little plan that we were working on in our spare moments on the show, that Will was going to create this game, and hopefully we would, get it in as a piece of set dressing, but also have it become something that would actually work, have rules, and you could actually play and add that to the lore.
Sean Crowley says Tut Knuckle. Would that be the name of the game? Do you know? Sean is a Bronco historian. He knows everything.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds. I mean, I could check really quick and see if we've ever talked about it.
So when we were working on the tall card game, because we were like, okay, somebody needs to put out a tall card, just because that's such a popular thing from the show. We were looking up, and I think I remember coming across rumors that there was an existing rule set like that was used in the show's development for tall card, but we could never find that. We found some like really well-loved fan-made rule sets. But I remember encountering the rumor. So, and it's probably one of those things where the wires got crossed, where somebody just assumed the game Tut Knuckle or whatever. Somebody along the lines confused that for tall card.
Well, I can say Sean is right. I went back, and here I am in 2020 talking to Tom Krasansky. And this is me. This is my. Actually, there's a game that the set designer developed that I helped with. It's getting finished with the help of some fans. Tut Knuckle is what it's called. So, yeah. So good job, Sean.
I want to shout out Sean for a second. He does have he keeps a history of the Brown Coat fandom and every single thing that's associated with it, every piece of art he can find. So if you're ever have a question, Ron Crowley is the guy to hit up.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure then he's seen this. This is called Done the Impossible, and it is a documentary about Firefly by the fans for the fans. And I watched it and I get angry because there are two parts to this documentary. There's one that is the straight on just documentary in which they interview people from what used to be called the OB. So when Firefly was on television, Fox had, their fledgling website, and they had message boards that were dedicated to the various shows they had on television. And one was the Firefly message boards. And a ton of people signed up and became members of the Firefly message boards. And once Firefly got canceled, and it was looking like the message boards for Firefly were going to go away because Fox was getting rid of their Firefly website, they allowed the message boards to be detached and go out online as a separate entity. And so it became known as the OB, the original boards. And when this documentary was created, they interviewed a lot of people from the OB, and the documentary is all interviewing and hearing how much they love the show and everything else. But there's another part to this documentary, which is called, it's a timeline of events, a timeline of Firefly. And the timeline is narrated by Jewel State. And it talks, and it just goes, date by date, all the important dates in the history of Firefly, from when Joss Whedon read the Michael Shara novel, The Killer Angels, which Chris says, he talked about how Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg, that's what Firefly was based on. Joss wasn't looking at the Confederacy as the slave owning, people that they were. He was looking at, okay, let's just take the American Civil War and take a look at one lone Confederate who, after the war, had to figure out how to pick his life up and continue to move on after losing this war. And that's where Malcolm Reynolds came from. And so the timeline of events of Firefly on the DVD start right when it mentions how Joss got his idea from reading the book. And then it goes on, and as Jewel is narrating, she'll say, on this date, this happened. On this date, there was the World Series game. On this date, it was preempted so they could show a rerun of an Adam Sandler movie. And then throughout some of that, they show clips from the main documentary as well. And watching the timeline of events, I get so angry because to me, it looks like they didn't try. And part of it, I've often thought, who were these people in charge of Fox programming? And I understand when you are in charge of programming, and Fox is such a big entity, and like all the networks are, and there's so many shows on all the time, that these people in programming can say, okay, let me move this here, we'll put this here. And they're not going to watch everything that's on because there's too much for them to be able to watch all the time. So they're just looking at what works best and what's getting views, and we're going to move this and this. But part of me wants to say that if they had actually watched the show and seen just how good it was, that maybe they would have tried harder to keep it on, because the people who were responsible at Fox for Arrested Development knew what they had. They knew that the audience that needed to keep the show solvent wasn't there, but that the show was good enough that they needed to keep it, and Fox tried to save it and tried to do different things. I mean, they had an ad in which Jason Bateman said, hey, we need to get this amount of viewers for this, and if we can get this many viewers to get renewed, we're going to give one of our Emmys to Carmen Electra.
I think part of it too, though, was the era in which Firefly aired. I mean, you could sit here and say it was ahead of its time, but back then, you needed higher ratings than you do today. If Firefly were on the air today with the ratings that it had in 2002, it would not have been canceled. It would have been picked up for at least another season. And Firefly being preempted for everything from baseball playoffs to Adam Sandler movies, it was only a few years later that you started to see shows like Lost and The Sopranos, and where fans started to get used to the idea of having to wait a long time for new episodes to be on the air. And now we're in an era of streaming where, the next season of Wednesday isn't going to appear on Netflix until the fall of this year, when the last season was released how long ago? Now, but back then it was unheard of that you were going to take 2 weeks off for a fledgling show. And again, the numbers, if you look at some of the shows that survived for seasons on USA Network or TNT or FX, Firefly had better numbers than them. It's just back then that was not something that networks were willing to do. Networks weren't willing to say, okay, we're gonna hang on to this and make it a slow burn, and it wasn't part of the way they operated in 2002. And now it's because streaming has changed everything. It's a part of the way everybody operates. At Firefly, and I am not advocating in any way, shape, or form a reboot. I'm actually somebody that would like to see Firefly stay as it is. Firefly is James Dean. Firefly died young and beautiful, and I always want to see Firefly as the James Dean of sci-fi westerns. But the truth is, if Firefly had debuted in 2019, I think it would have been on the air for 10 seasons. Everything is a product of its time too, and I think the way Firefly was treated was also a product of the time in which it aired.
That makes good sense. And I will say, back in the day, first, just a shout out to the Pasadena Humane Society. This chat tonight, we are raising money for the Pasadena Humane Society. Terrible fires out in California, and a lot of animals that no longer have homes that need our help. So anything that you can do. Chris, Book Girl said that I heard that if we meet our goal tonight during the stream, that Steve will dance. Is that true? Well, Steve doesn't need to meet a goal to dance. I'll do that. I'll dance at all.
How much do I donate to get it to stop?
Where was I going? I don't
Dance
remember.
Class.
No. But I was going to say that I think that the Firefly, having it continue, that's something that I think the folks that were in the show, that's probably more than any other question. Hey, is there going to be more fire? Do you think there'll ever be more Firefly? And they probably hear that more than anything else. And I was at a convention back in 2010. And was it 2010? I think it was probably maybe 2013, 24, 20, I forget now. However, Adam Baldwin was at the convention. And I met him. I was dressed as Jane Cobb. I got a picture taken with him. It's probably one of the coolest pictures that has ever been taken of me. Jane Cobb shaking the hand of Jane Cobb while I was dressed as Jane Cobb. And someone asked him, do you think there'll be more Firefly? And the answer that he gave was an answer that I had been thinking about for a while. And that was, the Avengers hadn't been out in theaters yet. But Adam said, I think it all depends on how well the Avengers does in theaters as to whether or not we'll see more Firefly. Because I guess the thought was that if the Avengers do extremely well, and they did, and make a ton of money, then Joss is going to be considered, holy cow, look at this. I mean, a lot of people already knew that Joss, made all these great shows. But I think that, seeing how much money Serenity made, or Avengers made, and that, wow, he was a hot commodity. Everybody wants him. The thought maybe was that if some studio came to him and said, hey, Joss, we have this great idea, would you direct this film? That he might say, sure. Can you help me out with a little thing that I've got on the side called Serenity 2? And the hope was that he was going to become such a popular director that he could say, this is what I want to do. And some studio would say, yes, let me give you the money. And that never really happened. And don't know if that's ever going to happen. So, yeah.
I have had a thought about that since Disney bought the rights to Firefly from, bought Fox.
Yeah.
I think that there's always the possibility, as Disney figures out how to monetize things.
Sure.
I think there's always the chance that we could see some kind of iteration, and definitely not a reboot of the original, but I could see something kind of like the way they did The Mandalorian. But I think too, like, Disney doesn't really take a lot of risks. Star Wars is an enormous property, and it's you could make the worst Star Wars movie and it would make a lot of money. I think that, Disney, if the right project came in where they could figure out how to monetize it, and they thought it would be a big enough of a hit, I think that they would do it. I don't think anything would stop them. I don't think that they're in the business of not making things that will make them money. But until that happens, then I don't think that they have a thought really about it, until somebody brings them that project.
Well, it is now 2 hours and 2 minutes since we've started this show. It went a lot longer than I thought, and so I'm thinking it's probably about time to wrap this up. Again, Otherworldly Fundraising, and this month our chat is for the Pasadena Humane Society. We're trying to raise money for all these displaced animals because of all the horrible fires out there in California. The link is scrolling along the bottom, and I am going to say that this has been a great chat. I'm glad to have at least met 3 of you. I know Zach pretty well, and then, but if anybody wants to say anything, is there anything that anyone hasn't talked about that would like to, want to throw something out there? Or?
I think that I think that Chris and I have something that we've been sitting on, and we both really want to share it because we have not shared it.
Okay.
Chris, you want to start?
I actually don't. You're the captain of this one. I want you to start.
It was kind of partly Chris's idea and partly Chris's fault. But we
I'll accept that. But you're still the captain.
We have,
Sorry. So I'll tell you what my idea was, and then I'll let Lynelle tell you what it became. Because I'm really excited about what it became. So again, I've been involved with Can't Stop the Serenity since 2013, and one of the guys on my crew here in Pittsburgh, Bob Averill, who's been around the fandom for a long time. You were talking about the message boards. He's an original bronzer from the original bronze message boards from Buffy. And we were talking about the state of Can't Stop the Serenity after all these years, and what we'd like to see happen with the charity fundraiser to maybe breathe some new life into it, or maybe send it out in style. We weren't really sure how it was going to go after the pandemic. And we said, you know, what would be really cool? You got the 20th anniversary of Serenity coming up. It would be really cool if you could have a great big Can't Stop the Serenity shindig in Los Angeles. And so we said, well, you know, if we're going to do that, we've got to contact the California Browncoats and see what they think about it. And when we contacted Lynelle and we pitched that idea to her, it turned out that they were already conjuring something of their own. So it kind of got the ball rolling and it became something even bigger. And I'm going to let her take it from there.
So we had been kind of kicking around the idea of hosting the Browncoat Ball, which I don't know if everybody has heard of.
Right. Yeah.
We haven't had one in California since 2006, and we've been kind of playing. There's Vex playing with that idea, and we, you know, I can't do 2 big years. I could do 1 big year. So we said if we want to do a big CSTS thing, which makes absolute sense, then we should combine it with our ball. So what we're actually planning is a really, I don't have the words for this. It's just such a big project and it's so exciting. It's a weekend. It's an immersive thing to bring all the Browncoats, as many Browncoats who can come together to have, to get together, to have a Can't Stop the Serenity screening, to benefit charity, to have the ball, and to also kind of, we want to do a tour of shooting locations. So kind of almost, I don't know how to say this.
It's a celebration. It's a celebration.
That's it. A big damn shindig. A celebration to celebrate. Because this year is the 20th anniversary of Serenity. So to celebrate that, but also to celebrate the Browncoat fandom, which has like been so amazing and done so much good and been such a deeply attached community, like a community where people are just really embedded in it and it lifts them up. And so we want to really celebrate that. And so it is. We're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but the Rivers and Bridges Brigade has sent us a lot of help. We're getting help from Kentucky Browncoats and Can't Stop the Serenity Global and the Utah Browncoats. Like, it's not just this little thing. Like, so many other groups are trying to support it and add to it. And I think it's going to be a really somebody is leaving California soon. Okay, well, hold on. It's going to be September, the weekend of September 20th. I think Thursday is the 18th. September 19th, 20th is the ball through the 21st. So I hope you guys can hold on a little longer in California because I think it's going to be something really beautiful and fun. And I would love to see as many Browncoats there as we could get.
Awesome. That's really, really fun. And, you know, as you guys get this plan together and start, you know, coming up with things you need to share, you know, let us know, and I'll try to share them on, you know, all the Browncoat stuff that I do here, and we just, yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We don't have the official website up yet, but it should be up. I think our goal is like within a month. We're going to have the Browncoat Ball website up, and tickets will be available, and the hotel will be available. It's a really cute hotel, but I think it's going to be a really beautiful celebration.
Yeah,
very
a big damn shindig.
Very nice. Dylan, Zach, is there anything you'd like to say?
Other than thanks for inviting me to this, and anytime you want me to drop in again, I'm happy to do it. There's definitely more to say, lots to talk about. I did pull this up just to say hello, but in case you were wondering who's on this Jane shirt, it's me.
Oh,
I'm on 2 of them. So
nice.
Just
thanks for having me.
Would you ever like release those t-shirts? Like, would you do a line of t-shirts?
I know that I know that my files were taken by somebody at the end of the series and ended up on eBay for a while. I was actually contacted by the studio about that at the time. But so the artwork got out there early, and there have been lots of replications of it. I cannot use them in any kind of mode of profit, but I think they're out there in the prop forums and stuff like that. So I know people have made them, but I can't do that. So I'm not allowed.
Yeah. So my face isn't on any t-shirts, but I think my likeness is in one of the games, maybe Fistful credits or something. But yeah, this has been great. It's been great meeting the few of you who I didn't know and chatting with those of you who I did know in this. So that, yeah, this has been really cool. If anybody's interested in me or my stuff, I don't work for the toy company anymore, but my URL is there to my Instagram and stuff. So
okay, yes. And so Kristen posted $64 gets us to our goal. So again, we're raising money for the Pasadena Humane Society. So please feel free to donate. And the link will be up for several days after today's show. So anyone that's going to watch this after the fact, you can still go and donate. So our cats, we have 3 of them. 2 of them are rescues from local rescue group. So River is a rescue, Starlight is a rescue, and Spooky technically is a rescue because my in-laws, where we got married in the backyard of their farm, when they lived at that farm, people used to drop off stray cats there all the time because they figured, oh, the farmers will take care of them. And so Spooky's mom and the litter of cats that he was with were just dropped off at the farm. And Rebecca saw him and said, I need to rescue this little boy and bring him home. And so we have Spooky. And then we had Tempest. Rebecca had a cat, Tempest. And so Spooky and Tempest lived together. Tempest ended up getting cancer and we had to put her down, and Spooky ended up going into major depression, and we realized that we needed to get someone to help him out. So that's when we got River, and he treated her like a kitten and pretty much has been she's his baby and still is. And then we felt that, we had Spooky, who's all black, River, who's black and white, and we wanted to complete our family with an orange kitty. So we ended up getting Starlight, who was also a rescue and very sick and emaciated when we got her. And she was maybe a year or 2 old, had already had a full litter of cats. She had gotten pregnant out on the streets. And now she's a little chubby. But we're happy. We love them all. And so, for us, rescuing animals is very much something that we're always passionate about. So the Humane Society of Pasadena is definitely worth it. Oh, and this is Starlight.
This is our chubby baby. She was so skinny when we got her, and now she's chubby. But we don't talk about it because we don't want her to feel bad.
Yep. And so again, we're donating to the Pasadena Humane Society, raising money. So anything you can, that would be great. Before we go, so we know Zach gave, his little where you can find him. If anyone wants to find you, Dylan, where will they look?
I have it on my little headline there, but Dylan Who Designs is my Instagram handle where you can find my art stuff.
Okay. And where are the Pittsburgh Browncoats?
Probably the easiest way to find us is to go to our new website, which is theriversandbridgesbrigade.com. It is exactly that, theriversandbridgesbrigade.com, and it is it's all one word, like all slammed together.
Okay, that's great. And what about the California Browncoats?
We're at californiabrowncoats.org.
Okay,
and pretty much everything is either that or CA Browncoats.
And the Rochester Browncoats, we are on a bunch of socials at ROC Browncoats. We don't have a website. I've often thought about maybe getting just a very simple website, like rochesterbrowncoats.com, for people that don't want anything to do with social media, and we could just post events and stuff. So that may happen at some point in the future. But on most of the major socials, we're at ROC Browncoats, and you can find us there. So I guess I'm gonna say that's it. I mean, I could talk forever on Firefly, and before you know it, it'd be, Saturday already. So I think we'll call it a night. I want to thank all of you for
Thank you all
agreeing to come and just talking about the love of this wonderful show, and actually getting some insight into the actual show itself from Dylan, who was there, who let us know that he's actually stood on the bridge.
That was very cool.
That is really shiny.
To Dylan talk anytime.
Yes. So all right, I'm gonna say thank you to everyone that watched. Thank you. And this video stream is going to be on YouTube and Facebook, and anyone that wants to watch it again or share it with other people. Definitely. Sean said it was great listening to you all. Thanks for sharing your stories, experiences, and knowledge. Well, you're welcome, Sean. And again, Pasadena Humane Society, they need our help. The animals are hurting because of the fires. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for the donations. And now let's blow our goal out of the water. And yes, thank you for that, Kristen. And I'm going to sign off.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Bye.